100 pod. Say it again. This is the 100 pod. 100 pod. I'm Tiffany Red, and this is the 100 pod. Say it again. This is the 100 pod. 100 pod.
Mickey Shiloh is most definitely the definition of an entrepreneur. She is an independent record label owner. She is an author. She is a multi-platinum selling songwriter. She's an artist. She is a builder. I mean, I've watched her build so many things, and we've built things together as well. She has written for superstars like Janet Jackson and Britney Spears, and I'm positive that you're going to catch a bunch of gems listening to Mickey Shiloh.
When I was growing up, I wanted to be a rapper. That was my first dream. My dad was a rapper. I really looked up to him in the writing space. He'd always be around the crib with his notebook and writing rhymes. And yeah, I remember from as far back as I can remember, the first dream was to be a rapper. The kind of music I listened to growing up was varied, but both of my parents were hip hop heads. So there was a lot of Method Man, Eminem. There was some Missy Elliott in there, but then my mom would throw in some Dixie Chicks randomly. Michelle and DeCello. Those were staples for us. It was, the hip hop and then some random country and R&B soul in there. It was, definitely eclectic. My first job was music. I've never had an actual job. I've never had a 9-to-5 in my entire life. And I felt very weird about that for a long time. Like I felt like I was missing out on some like huge life experience. I remember there was one point where I was like, should I just get a job to just get one to see what it's like? Even though I didn't necessarily need it. I just wanted to be able to say that I had a job. I felt very like privileged to say that I haven't had a 9-to-5, but now I'm like, man, that was my path. And again, just grateful that I've found a way to make good money in music because it's the hardest industry to make money in. I started pursuing a music career when I was 12, I would say. I was I don't know, I just had this random moment where I told my mom, take me to Best Buy and get me a microphone and a recording software. I really don't remember what prompted me wanting to do that. I wish I did because it would be such a cool part of my story, but I was just like, take me to Best Buy, and I got Magic's 2004, which was like an elementary recording software that I could use on my PC laptop. And I got a like 1995 microphone headset thing. 1995, meaning that's how much the shit cost. It was like less than $20. And that's how I started recording my first songs. And then a few years of kind of learning to record myself and putting music out on MySpace Music. That's where I was discovered by a producer named Chad Dexter. And I worked with him for a couple years, and then, got signed to Darkchild at 17. It all happened within a 5-year span, early teens. I don't think I was ever inspired to get into the business. I just liked making music. I didn't know anything about the music business. Obviously you wouldn't when you first get into it. I didn't even realize that artists didn't write their songs until I was 15 or 16 years old when I was working with Chad. And he was like, we're going to write a song for Ashley Simpson. And I'm like, what? She don't write her own songs? I'm confused. I just had this like whole moment where my mind was blown and like, wow, you can make a living as a songwriter? And then I found out you can't make a living as a songwriter. But no, I wasn't inspired by anyone in particular, honestly. I just kind of was thrust into it by being good at writing songs, people wanted to pull me into that world. And I'm glad that I did garner the industry knowledge rather than just stay creative, because too many artists and songwriters just stay creative and get taken advantage of in business. So I'm glad that I had some really good business mentors around me. And that just happened naturally. I wasn't asking for it, but maybe subconsciously I was asking for it and had some great mentors. My very first placement was I was singing a hook on a Twista record. The song was called Jump Off. And I was 15 saying, like, jump off, boy, come and get it. He definitely didn't know I was 15. Twista didn't know that. And so once I got that placement, that was the first time I'd seen like a side artist contract, you know, like basically just saying, you know, you're not getting shit for this, but hey, you're on the song. No shade. I mean, I was 15. Like, what was I expecting, right? And then most of my next placements happened when I got signed to Dark Child at 17. You know, wrote for Janet Jackson, Britney Spears, you know, J-Lo. I saw almost any artist I ever wanted to see come through the doors at, you know, Dark Child Studios. It was absolutely amazing. First time I met Diddy was there. You know, just an absolutely wild experience at 17, 18, 19 years old. So I met Dark Child through a songwriter and producer named John Asher, and I met John Asher on MySpace. So the the starting point of everything was online for me. I would not be where I am today without the existence of the internet or MySpace music in particular. That's how it all started. Um, John was working with Dark Child, his girl group at the time, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come down to LA and like meet Dark Child? And you know, it's very chill, whatever." And so I was like, "Hell yeah, I can't miss this opportunity." So my uncle, you know, I was 16 at the time, 15, 16. So my uncle um drove me down to Los Angeles, you know, from the Bay. And I met Dark Child. I was working with his girl group that he had at the time. We went bowling. I got to stay, you know, stay with his family after I got signed. He brought me out there to stay for a couple months during the summer. And yeah, it was just really rolling from then. Man, I haven't thought about that specifically in a really long time, like what it was like day to day, you know. I remember the first day Dark Child, he took me to the studio. I was like, "Oh my God," I'm like, "Dark Child's driving me to his studio with him right now. Like I'm in his Bentley with him. Like what is going on?" I thought it was so cool. So fun. My family, honestly, for the most part, has been incredibly supportive of my decision to be in music, especially my dad. You know, like I said, he was a rapper and he wanted me to succeed to levels he never got to touch. And so he kind of vicariously still to this day lives through me, but I love it. The only thing I would say is once I hit maybe 23 or 24, and I'd had, you know, platinum plaques on my wall and, you know, different levels of success that some people would like die to have, right? I'd worked with every producer and almost every artist I'd ever wanted to. But from my family's perspective, they're thinking about longevity and having a stable paycheck and all of those things. So once I started getting older, they're like, okay, well, that was a fun dream. So now what are you going to do to make money for real and not just depend on these random checks here and there? Because that's not how you're going to survive. Um, and that's when it started to become not less supportive, but just the concerns really started to sink in. And for me too, I'm like, shit, I'm 24 and I can't pay my rent on my own, you know? So I was just lucky to stumble upon a lot of really great online tools that enabled me to finally start making income as a songwriter and an artist. You know, soundbetter.com is a huge one. And you know, I prayed that I would find a way to use the skill sets that I had garnered the past 10 years. I was like, God, please don't let all this go to waste. Let me use these skills. I'm not trying to go get a regular job. And God delivered. God delivered. Experience has been that most of the records that come out that I've written are my least favorite song out of the batch maybe that I did for that artist. Almost every time. Everything from the Janet Jackson to the Britney Spears. Man, when we were working on Britney Spears records in 2009, we did maybe 100 songs in a span of 2 or 3 months. And the record, the one that she ended up dropping, it's called Don't Keep Me Waiting. It's a cool song. It's like kind of pop rock vibe, but I know what the 99 other records sound like. And I'm like, damn, there were so many more that were like bangers, right? And so if I had to choose like gun to my head, what my favorite song I've worked on, honestly, this isn't even something that I wrote. I was just on the song. I would say Shades of Blue by Vic Mensa. And not particularly just because of the song. And like, he's such a conscious, cool rapper. But I just know the stories behind all of his lyrics. And he's just so genuinely honest. And I'm just an artist and a songwriter that really prides myself in being vulnerable and being honest. And he's he's actually the only artist I know that has, well, no, I don't want to say that. One of the only artists I know that really is excruciatingly honest. And that record, Shades of Blue, definitely got to listen to that. It's a very, very deep record. Yeah, I would say Shades of Blue by Vic. I manage my time with an app called Tick Tick. It's incredible. It's like $28 a year, super worth it. I also, before I could even put anything on a schedule, I had to figure out what my priorities are. And that's the biggest issue, is most people don't take the time to really think about their priorities. And so they don't know how much time to spend on what, or what to even be doing. So I know my priorities are my business and my health. And so these days, at least, I take the health thing a lot more seriously than I did when I was younger, because I thought I was invincible. But since business is one of my top priorities, I'm really on top of customer service. So every morning I set aside an hour to answer emails. And then when it comes to health, I'm very committed to getting in at least 30 minutes a day of exercise, even if it's walking. Like, I got to do something, right? So that's how I manage my time, is by first always revisiting my priorities. And tick, tick. That's it. I do a lot of different plates spinning at all times. But when you can see it visually, for me, a digital calendar is best. Some people like the physical calendars, but just drop them priorities. I do not think that having a manager is necessary if you have nothing to manage. I say that all the time. People are often so quick to think that someone else is going to swoop in and completely change their career, which is absolutely true in some cases. You know, you link up with a Scooter Braun, or, you know, someone like that. That's someone that could potentially change your life in an instant. However, when it comes to managers, their actual job is really not to create opportunities for you. That's not their job. Their job is to manage. Now, a good manager will create opportunities for you, but to find a good manager, it's not even someone you need to go find. It's someone that should find you, because that's also, hold on. It's someone that should find you. That's also a major key, is not to go search, because that means you're not doing enough for yourself. You know, there's absolutely so many ways you can manage yourself. Something I always, the advice I always give is to set up an email, a fake email address, and you can have people go through that fake email, and you can just act as if you're your own manager, right? And just, if someone wants to get on the phone, I'm out of the country, I can't talk right now. I don't have data in this country. But no, honestly, yeah, the fake email thing. I saw that Lady Gaga used to do that. She mentioned that in an interview, and I was like, that's smart, to create kind of a a barrier between yourself and your business. How do you place a song? Well, there's so many politics involved. I think more important than the how is just being patient, being a very patient person, which is very hard to do, but it's so necessary. I mean, the first step is your network. The second step is the actual music. I say that networking is number one because someone with a great song with no network won't get it placed, but someone with an okay song with a network will get it placed. So the network is more important than the music to me. But yeah, the political game, I got to write an entire book about it. It's complete chess and checkers all at once. But yeah, my advice for getting placements is just focus on networking with people that already got something going on, whether that's an A&R or a producer or another songwriter. Try and attach yourselves to them in some way, in a non-annoying way. I would say also one of the best ways I've found to get into certain rooms is to respect everybody in the process, everyone from the interns or runners, to absolutely the engineer, because a lot of times engineers are the ones in the studio with the artist late at night. And that's an in right there, respecting everybody along the way. And time will take time, lots of time. So my advice on handling a split dispute, I've only had a handful of issues with splits actually in my career. I'm very blessed to work with people that we all have a common understanding that, we're splitting this equally, like pretty much. If I'm just in the room vibing out and just talking to you and you go in and write an entire record based off of a concept that I, in a way gave you, we don't have to split it equally, but like I'm gonna get something, even though I didn't write a lyric or a melody. I was in the room, it was a vibe, right? So the only issues that I've had particularly with splits were when I was working with artists that, this is really weird, but not drinking, but working with artists that drink and smoke a lot in the session tend to be very forgetful. And so I've gotten splits back from labels. It's happened 2 or 3 times where they'll propose 5% to me, 5 to 10%. And I have to go back and be like, wait, I literally wrote this entire record, but the artist was inebriated, right? And those artists are also songwriters. And so that's how it gets kind of mixed up. So how do you handle the split dispute is, I mean, if I'm close with the artist, I talk to the artist about it. Like, hey, you may not remember, but I remember, and we need to get my original demo. Because one thing I'll always do is record melodies right away. I just like to freestyle. So most times the producer or the studio or engineer will have the original demo, and 9 times out of 10, the entire song was already there, and we need to revisit what them splits look like. So just always, if you're not going to use voice notes, I hear a lot of people saying they use voice notes, which is important. But if you're not going to use voice notes, just make sure you have the original demo that you recorded in the studio or by yourself, wherever you recorded it at. Just having some sort of recording. That's how you handle it. And then you show the executive or the publishing company, whoever's in charge of those splits. How do I balance everything I do? I don't balance it. I'm not balanced. I don't try to be balanced either. I let whatever my priority for the day or the week or the month just take me away with it. I have a lot of projects that I'm working on, so time management is very important. If I have a certain deadline for a website I'm working on, then that's going to be my priority that week. I'm going to make most of my empty slots in my schedule catered to that project. but balance is pretty subjective, and I wouldn't call myself balanced at all. Like, if I'm just being honest, but I like how I like my schedule, though. I do like my schedule. I think a publishing deal should be considered when, well, there's a couple scenarios. One, you have placements out, you already have records out, and you are offered a huge amount of money, and you need the money. You need the money, because if you don't need the money, there's absolutely no reason to get a publishing deal when you're already getting placements. Like, you're already on a roll. There's really no real reason. Ownership is absolutely everything, to me at least. I would say the second reason you may consider getting a publishing deal, again, I think, is money related. Just even if you don't have any placements and you really need the money, but I would really just stress for people to heavily weigh the pros and cons. If it were me, knowing what I know now about how this shit works, I would get a 9 to 5 before getting a publishing deal, because at least I can quit a 9 to 5. You cannot quit your publishing deal. So, yeah. There have been many moments that I've quit. Um, the first time I was 19, I was in a really incredibly deep depression. It's before I was diagnosed bipolar. I was diagnosed when I was 21. I didn't know what was going on with me. And I didn't quit because I wanted to. I quit because I couldn't write. Like, I was so chronically depressed that I just couldn't. I got through that by I took 8 entire months off. I moved back to the Bay Area and was with family. And I remember one day my grandmother brought in a book to me that had like 100,000 different jobs you can get and the salaries for each one. And that made me even more depressed. But yeah, that was my longest break from music. 8 months not recording music, not listening to music, nothing. I was absolutely devastated. The second time I went through an emotion of quitting was, I want to say when I was 23, 24, when again, it was like, I'm really good at what I do, but the money in my bank account is not matching my skill sets. And I didn't want to quit, but I felt that I had to pivot somehow to something that was going to bring in more money. But again, God always comes through. You don't know when, that's the hardest part, but through those struggles, you're actually learning resilience, and you're learning how to better take care of your mind. I wouldn't take back any of those depressions that I had, even though they fucking suck when it's happening. It's absolutely miserable, but now I appreciate my success and my happiness so much more, and it's worth that balance. With the light there has to be dark. So how you get through it, you literally put one foot in front of the other every day. You get up, you brush your damn teeth, you take a shower, go on a walk. You create anything. It doesn't even need to be music. It could be writing a page in a journal. It could be absolutely anything that you can create. Anything. Just do that every day. My advice on handling myself as a woman, or how any woman could or should handle themselves in music, is to, number one, get it in your brain that you do not ever, 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 ever need to supply anyone with any sexual favors to be successful. I think that women just coming into this have, not all women, but a lot of women have this preconceived notion that that's kind of something that you have to do or have to experience. And it is so not true. And I know it's not true because myself and many other very successful women around me have never had to do anything to get to where they are, nothing sexual to get to where they are. Now, have we experienced sexual harassment is an absolutely different story. So something that I made sure, I'm already a tomboy, first of all. So it wasn't like I had to change myself at all. But whenever I'd go to studio sessions or, parties or anything, I dressed appropriately. Now, anyone that wants to dress how they dress has nothing to do with, how sexual they may be, right? I just personally chose to be modest most times because I just didn't even want to spark more conversations than needed to be sparked. Conversations were sparked whether I was wearing a trash bag or not, but still, like, the less the less available you make those comments, the better. So I would always say, if you don't want the attention, don't dress like you want the attention. So that's number one. And then number two, know the business, like actually know the business, especially as a woman, because it's a male dominated industry. And a lot of these men just know the business and they prey on people that do not. And it's sad to see females getting taken advantage of sexually and in business. So those are my top two. Be as modest as you can be. I'm not saying be a nun, but be as modest as you can be so that you're respected all the way, as you should be, no matter how you dress. But we got to live in the times we are in. And then number two is learning the business. The best book on the music business is All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman. That's one of the best books. It's like the music Bible. I suggest everyone read it many times. It's got everything in there. So I have had a very, very, very hard time balancing mental health and working in music for many layers. There's many layers to that reality. Layer number one is that music, when you work in music, especially when you're in the studio or you go to events, you're constantly surrounded by alcohol and drugs and things that are just actually not good for your mental, period. But it's even more so regular in our industry. And so, coming up as in my late teens and early 20s, being in the studio environment every day, I was drinking a lot. And as a bipolar person, especially, drinking affects your sleep. It affects your mood. It's naturally a depressant, right? So I was having a really hard time for many years self-medicating with things like alcohol and smoking weed. Thankfully, I never got into hard drugs because that would have been even crazier. And it's sad that we see that a lot. So I had to decide to grow up. After 5 hospitalizations, I was hospitalized 5 times in a span of 5 or 6 years, unwillingly, having manic episodes because I was smoking a lot of weed and not sleeping and drinking, all this. I was like, it's time to grow the fuck up. All right, you're 25. Let's get it together. So I decided you're not going to smoke weed crazy anymore. You're not going to drink in excess because you don't need to do that. You can create without all those things. And it was a decision and I committed to it. And now here I am, 4 years later, no hospitalizations, no major manic episodes. And it's all just about deciding to be responsible. And I decided. One of my biggest lessons I've learned in the music industry is that it's all about who you know. I mean, that sounds so cliche, but that is quite literally the difference between being successful and being unsuccessful. Like I said, you could have an amazing song and not know the right person and it'll never be heard. Or you have an okay song and you know the right person and it's heard by millions of people. So that is the lesson. And with that lesson, I just always want to encourage people to get out of their shell and out of their bubble of isolation if they do find themselves at home or just creating amongst them and their friends. Like, you need to branch out. You need to do everything you can to make connections outside of your immediate circle. And if you're not someone that's outgoing and all of that, which a lot of creatives aren't, like, we're very reclusive and to ourselves a lot of the times. If you know you're that kind of person that it's not easy for you to network, then you have to find somebody, not necessarily a manager, but you have to find someone that can do that for you on your behalf. You need like a mouthpiece, right? Someone that is totally excited to talk about you and your talent and all of that, to make those connections for you. That's the biggest lesson, is you can't self-isolate and expect just because you make great music for it to go anywhere. It won't. My religion and spirituality have not changed since starting music. I've always been like a spiritual person, believe in God. I don't really know what to call myself religion wise. My mom's Jewish, which technically makes me Jewish, because if your mom is Jewish, you're Jewish. And then my dad is Christian. I've had some very extreme personal moments with, the light and the dark side. Especially as a bipolar person, going through manic episodes at a certain point can be very, very dark. There was at one point I literally wrote a contract between me and the devil. Like, it was some crazy shit. I was just having an extremely scary manic episode and feeling a very, very like dark energy around me, right? And it's like, you hear about those things all the time, but when it happens to you, you're like, oh shit, this is real. Like, dark energy really exists. Oh shit. So I think all that to say, my spirituality hasn't changed, but I've definitely gotten much closer to God through music, because at the end of the day, I consider myself, and I know that I am, a very good person, and I would never use my talents for evil, if that makes sense, because some people do. They really do. So if anything, yeah, my relationship with God has just gotten stronger throughout my journey in music. I think when it comes to songwriters and getting points and all of that, which they are absolutely owed, I think it's gonna have to start as just an individual songwriter making it a precedent that they are gonna get points. Like, if you want to work with me, this is what I'm owed, or we're not working, period. It's going to have to start as the individual. And once enough people start doing that, it can become an actual organization. But as of now, 2021, it's an individual choice. And there's a songwriter that I used to work with back in the day, Lauren Christie. She's amazing. She wrote Skater Boy for Avril Lavigne and freaking like all Avril Lavigne's major hits back in the day. She charges like 20 grand for a session or something, like, because she can, and people pay that because she's an amazing songwriter and she gets hits done, right? So once you build that skill set to where you're in demand, or where you come in and do something undeniable, you can actually start demanding money and points. If someone wants to work with you, they need to go by whatever your terms are. I do that now too. I don't ask for no 20 grand, although I could. It's $1,200, like $1,200 for me to write the song, and I'm getting, whatever, 40% publishing, period. Like, or we're not working. I don't care. You're the one that wants to work with me. I didn't ask to work with you. My biggest piece of advice is fix your thoughts, because thoughts are things. And what we're thinking today is creating our reality tomorrow. And I heard recently somebody say something similar to that. It was like, the thoughts we're having now are creating our life in 3 to 5 years. So the life you're living now are based off of the thoughts you had 3 to 5 years ago. And so if you're somebody that wants to change your life, it completely starts in your mind. And that's what we're always talking about mostly, is people wanting to grow or not wanting to grow. So that is number one advice from me before anything, is fix your mindset. And that takes a lot of personal development and time. And that's okay. That's a part of the process. I would tell my 20-year-old self, put the Jameson down. Michaela, put the Jameson down. But honestly, I would tell myself that you don't need to do so much. It's okay that you want to, but just chill. Yeah, I was doing too much. Just relax, breathe. You got this. You can do this, but you don't need to do a million things at one time. My favorite book of all time almost is The One Thing by Gary Keller. I tell all of my consultation clients about it, all of my friends. It is a great book to figure out what your priorities are and what your big thing is. And he has a lot of instructions on how to get extraordinary results in your life. So yeah, The One Thing by Gary Keller. And if I could think of another one. Oh, I actually just read this book a few weeks ago. It's called Anything You Want by Derek Sivers. Absolutely amazing for anyone that is a CEO, founder of a startup, because Derek, the author, absolutely didn't give a fuck about corporate America and how you're supposed to run a company. He started and ran CD Baby off of genuine passion for helping, indie musicians. And he talks about how he didn't even have like a terms of service on his site. And he's like, if someone's going to sue me then. Like, I don't care. Just because most companies think they need that doesn't mean I need that. Like, what? I just love his nonchalantness and his humor. And I take a lot of inspiration for how I'm running hard drive kind of from things I picked up from him, because you tend to forget that you don't need to follow any rules as long as you're not hurting anybody. There's no rules that you actually have to follow. Rules were created by people, so you can create your own rules as well.